The human heart is situated in the middle mediastinum, at the level of thoracic vertebrae T5, T8. A double-membraned sac, called the pericardium, surrounds the heart and attaches to the mediastinum. The back surface of the heart lies near the vertebral column, and the front surface sits behind the sternum and rib cartilages. The upper part of the heart is the attachment point for several large blood vessels, the venae cavae, aorta, and pulmonary trunk. The upper part of the heart is located at the level of the third costal cartilage. The lower tip of the heart, the apex, lies to the left of the sternum, 8 to 9 centimeters from the midsternal line, between the junction of the fourth and fifth ribs near their articulation with the costal cartilages. The largest part of the heart is usually slightly offset to the left side of the chest, though occasionally it may be offset to the right, and is felt to be on the left because the left heart is stronger and larger, since it pumps to all body parts. Because the heart is between the lungs, the left lung is smaller than the right lung and has a cardiac notch in its border to accommodate the heart. The heart is cone-shaped, with its base positioned upwards and tapering down to the apex. An adult heart has a mass of 253-50 grams, 9-12 ounce. The heart is often described as the size of a fist, 12 centimeters, 5 in length, 8 centimeters, 3.5 in wide, and 6 centimeters, 2.5 in thickness, although this description is disputed, as the heart is likely to be slightly larger. Well-trained athletes can have much larger hearts due to the effects of exercise on the heart muscle. Similar to the response of skeletal muscle, the heart has 4 chambers, 2 upper atria, the receiving chambers, and 2 lower ventricles, the discharging chambers. The atria open into the ventricles via the atrioventricular valves, present in the atrioventricular septum. This distinction is visible also on the surface of the heart as the coronary sulcus. There is an ear-shaped structure in the upper right atrium called the right atrial appendage or auricle, and another in the upper left atrium, the left atrial appendage. The right atrium and the right ventricle together are sometimes referred to as the right heart. Similarly, the left atrium and the left ventricle together are sometimes referred to as the left heart. The ventricles are separated from each other by the interventricular septum, visible on the surface of the heart as the anterior longitudinal sulcus and the posterior interventricular sulcus. The cardiac skeleton is made of dense connective tissue, and this gives structure to the heart. It forms the atrioventricular septum, which separates the atria from the ventricles, and the fibrous rings which serve as bases for the 4 heart valves. The cardiac skeleton also provides an important boundary in the heart's electrical conduction system, since collagen cannot conduct electricity. The interatrial septum separates the atria and the interventricular septum separates the ventricles. The interventricular septum is much thicker than the interatrial septum, since the ventricles need to generate greater pressure when they contract. The heart has 4 valves, which separate its chambers. 1 valve lies between each atrium and ventricle, and 1 valve rests at the exit of each ventricle. The valves between the atria and ventricles are called the atrioventricular valves. Between the right atrium and the right ventricle is the tricuspid valve. The tricuspid valve has 3 cusps, which connect to chordae tendineae, and 3 papillary muscles named the anterior, posterior, and septal muscles. After their relative positions, the mitral valve lies between the left atrium and left ventricle. It is also known as the bicuspid valve due to its having 2 cusps, an anterior and a posterior cusp. These cusps are also attached via chordae tendineae to 2 papillary muscles projecting from the ventricular wall. The papillary muscles extend from the walls of the heart to valves by cartilaginous connections called chordae tendineae. These muscles prevent the valves from falling too far back when they close during the relaxation phase of the cardiac cycle. The papillary muscles are also relaxed and the tension on the chordae tendineae is slight. As the heart chambers contract, so do the papillary muscles. This creates tension on the chordae tendineae, helping to hold the cusps of the atrioventricular valves in place and preventing them from being blown back into the atria. 2 additional semilunar valves sit at the exit of each of the ventricles. The pulmonary valve is located at the base of the pulmonary artery. This has 3 cusps which are not attached to any papillary muscles. When the ventricle relaxes, blood flows back into the ventricle from the artery, and this flow of blood fills the pocket-like valve, pressing against the cusps which close to seal the valve. The semilunar aortic valve is at the base of the aorta and also is not attached to papillary muscles. This too has 3 cusps which close with the pressure of the blood flowing back from the aorta. The right heart consists of 2 chambers, the right atrium and the right ventricle, separated by a valve, the tricuspid valve. The right atrium receives blood almost continuously from the body's 2 major veins, the superior and inferior venae cavae. A small amount of blood from the coronary circulation also drains into the right atrium via the coronary sinus, which is immediately above and to the middle of the opening of the inferior vena cava. In the wall of the right atrium is an oval-shaped depression known as the fossa ovalis, which is a remnant of an opening in the fetal heart known as the foramen ovale. Most of the internal surface of the right atrium is smooth, the depression of the fossa ovalis is medial, and the anterior surface has prominent ridges of pectinate muscles, which are also present in the right atrial appendage. The right atrium is connected to the right ventricle by the tricuspid valve. The walls of the right ventricle are lined with trabeculae carneae, ridges of cardiac muscle covered by endocardium. In addition to these muscular ridges, a band of cardiac muscle, also covered by endocardium, known as the moderator band, reinforces the thin walls of the right ventricle and plays a crucial role in cardiac conduction. It arises from the lower part of the interventricular septum and crosses the interior space of the right ventricle to connect with the inferior papillary muscle. The right ventricle tapers into the pulmonary trunk, into which it ejects blood when contracting. The pulmonary trunk branches into the left and right pulmonary arteries that carry the blood to each lung. The pulmonary valve lies between the right heart and the pulmonary trunk. The left heart has 2 chambers, the left atrium, and the left ventricle, separated by the mitral valve.